Okay, if you're a founder, a leader, or really just anyone who's fascinated by what it actually takes to build something from the ground up, you need to know about this book. It's The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And look, this is not your typical feel-good business book. It's a raw, brutally honest guide for those moments when there are just no easy answers. So let's dive into some of the biggest lessons from one of the most real books ever written about leadership.
And boom, Horowitz hits you with this right from the get-go. This quote tells you everything. This isn't about vision boards and dreaming big. It's about what happens when that beautiful dream smacks right into a concrete wall of reality.
And that's really the core premise right here. Most business books are like cookbooks. They give you a recipe for success. Horowitz says, for the real, messy problems you face in a startup, there is no recipe. The hard things are hard precisely because there's no formula, no easy solution. This book is all about the war stories and the wisdom you earn in those moments.
And this brings us to the very heart of the book, a concept he calls the struggle. He explains it through his own insane experience as the CEO of a company called LoudCloud, which flew higher than you can imagine, right before it crashed and burned.
So picture this. It's the peak of the dot-com boom. LoudCloud is the talk of Silicon Valley. They've raised an insane amount of money. Their sales forecasts are just astronomical. They feel completely unstoppable. It's literally the dream every single founder is chasing.
And just like that, it was over. The dot-com bubble bursts, and it takes pretty much all of LoudCloud's customers down with it. The market just vanishes, basically overnight, and the company is suddenly in a fight for its life. I mean, just look at this number, 35 cents. Sometimes a single number can tell the entire story, right? After an incredibly painful IPO and round after round of layoffs, their stock price cratered to just 35 cents a share. This wasn't just a little setback. This was a near-death experience, and it just perfectly illustrates the brutal reality they were up against. And this quote from his co-founder, the legendary Mark Andreessen, just nails the psychological whiplash of being a startup CEO in a crisis. There's no middle ground. You're either on top of the world or you're staring into the abyss, and sometimes that happens in the same week or even the same day.
So this brings us to what the struggle actually is. It's not just having a tough quarter or a bad day at the office. No, it's this prolonged state of being where the weight of all that responsibility is just crushing you, and that amazing vision you started with feels like some distant, naive dream.
And Horowitz does not pull any punches when he describes it. It is visceral. It's when the stress is so deep that food literally loses its taste. It's when you feel like a complete and total fraud, when that little voice of self-doubt turns into full-blown self-hatred. It is the deep, personal, and incredibly lonely pain of leadership when absolutely everything is going wrong.
So how in the world do you lead when you're in the struggle? Well, this leads to Horowitz's next big idea. Surviving a crisis like this demands a totally different style of leadership. You have to become what he calls a wartime CEO. See, in peacetime, a CEO gets to focus on the nice things, like expanding the market and building a great company culture. They can build consensus, they can be flexible. But in wartime, when your company's survival is literally on the line, the mission shrinks to just one thing: win the war. The wartime CEO has to be decisive, demanding, and totally focused on that one threat. There's just no time for anything else.
And the number one, most important weapon for the wartime CEO is radical honesty. When everything is chaos and people are scared, the absolute worst thing you can possibly do is sugarcoat it. You have to face the brutal facts, and you have to make sure your entire company faces them with you.
Now, this isn't about being a pessimist. It's about being strategic. Telling the truth, even when the truth is ugly, builds trust. But even more importantly, it gets your whole company working on the problem. You can't expect your smartest people to solve an issue if you're hiding that issue from them. It's like that old saying from the open source world. Given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. And this honesty has to extend to the absolute hardest things a leader has to do, like layoffs. Horowitz had to do this 3 separate times. His playbook for it is all about doing it with clarity and respect. The CEO has to own it completely, act fast, prepare the managers, address everyone personally, and then, and this is so important, be visible, be present for the people who are left. That's how you get through the unthinkable and somehow keep your culture from falling apart. So you're making all these tough calls, you're communicating constantly, but Horowitz argues that the real war, the toughest battle of all, is the one that happens inside the CEO's own mind. This is the whole ballgame, right here. You can learn things like organizational design, hiring, firing. Those are skills.
but keeping your own head straight. Managing the fear, the pressure, the loneliness, the constant feeling of failure, that, right there, is the ultimate challenge.
Horowitz uses this incredible metaphor to explain what it feels like. He says if being a CEO were a test you took every day, the average score would be 22 out of 100. Now, for any high achiever, that feels like a catastrophic failure, right? But the reality of the job is that things are always going wrong, and you have to learn to accept that getting a 22 is just part of the game.
So he asked all the great, successful CEOs he knew, how did you do it? What was the secret sauce? And he found that their answers were all basically the same. They didn't point to some brilliant strategy or some killer instinct. They all said some version of this one simple thing. I didn't quit. The ultimate skill, it turns out, was just sheer, unrelenting perseverance.
Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. The book's core philosophy isn't about trying to avoid the hard things. It's about facing them head-on and actually understanding their purpose.
And this brings us to one of my absolute favorite concepts in the whole book, lead bullets. When his company was getting crushed by a competitor, everyone kept bringing him ideas for a silver bullet, a quick, easy fix. And he told them, there are no silver bullets. There are only lead bullets. What he meant was, there is no easy way out. The only path through is to do the grueling, heavy, hard work of just building a better product.
Ultimately, what Horowitz does is reframe the entire experience for you. The struggle isn't a sign that you failed or that something's wrong with your company. It is an inevitable, necessary part of building something worthwhile. In other words, it's not a bug, it's the feature. The struggle is the very thing that forges great companies and great leaders.
And that leaves us with this one last, powerful question. It's a gut check for every founder, every leader out there. The hard things are coming. The struggle is unavoidable. So the real question isn't whether you can avoid it. It's whether you have the courage to face it. Why did you start in the first place? Because that answer, that's what's going to get you through.